All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I don't think I'm supposed to wait for somebody to introduce me. I have no idea. So the link is here for the presentation that you can, and it's going to be on every slide pretty much for you as we go throughout. Thank you for coming and listening to the Flipping the Math or any classroom. I'm really actually pretty humbled that you're here because there's so many great other places you could be and sessions you could be at. So just to get started on this, let's see if this is working. It was working. Sorry guys. There we go. Nope. Alright, start here. So just a little quick about me. This is my name is Shay McGowan. I teach in State College Area School District. This is my 24th year of teaching math. And this is my 8th year of flipping the math classroom. I have mentored non-math teachers into flipping their classes as well. And so it's all going to look differently. Even within a same math class, it's going to look different with the flip. And so there's going to be a lot of time, hopefully at the end, that you can ask me questions about such different situations. I put a couple of questions that usually come up at the end there, but we will, I'll entertain any questions that you have. Before I go any further though, how many of you in here teach math? Wow, awesome. And then obviously there's other subjects that you're trying to flip. Anybody phys ed? Because you can flip a phys ed class, believe it or not. And so we're going to talk about this. If you have specific questions you ask, please for you. So I want to start with the why, because the why is really important to me in that it kind of touches base with what Matt Miller talked about this morning in his keynote. And that is that after 16 years of teaching, and I was teaching the same curriculum for 16 years, I was bored. I mean, bored sick. And I'm looking at my students and I was thinking, and at that point, our classes were 47 minutes, and we had 8 blocks a day, or 8 periods a day. And I'm like, if I'm bored, my kids have to be bored. They have to be. And so, I felt I had a good rapport with my students, but there was something missing. And so my husband also teaches math, and I started exploring leaving the math classroom. I had applied to Penn State to go in to get my electrical engineering degree, and I was actually going to go back to school and get my electrical engineering. Anybody know why I picked electrical engineering, math teachers? My favorite topic? Imaginary numbers. And so I love imaginary numbers. And so I love teaching everything about imaginary numbers. And so I'm like, okay, I can do this. Well, that was in the summer after my 16th year. Then my husband actually saw something somewhere. And he's like, hey Shay, check this out. And so I looked at it, and I went to my principal at the time, and I said, Scott, look, I'm bored. I'm really thinking about leaving the classroom. I said, would you send me to Virginia? It was a Saturday session, and I'm from State College, so it really wasn't that far. It was just straight down the middle of the state. And for me to go to this. And he's like, sure. And so he actually sent me and 7 other people down to go and just hear about what flipping was. Because at that time it wasn't really popular. And so I listened, and as soon as I got back to State College, I said to Scott, I've got to do this. I really want to try this. And he's like, go for it. And he really gave me he's like, but I do ask that you collect a little bit of data on it as you go, just to see if there is truly a difference in how the students are doing things. And we'll talk about some of that data here in a little bit, okay? And so I'm like, okay, so 8 years later, I'm still flipping. And if somebody said to me that you have to teach this course but you can't flip it, I'd probably have to leave teaching. My flip is, I flipped Advanced Algebra 2. So the first year I flipped, they say just take little steps. Do a unit here, do a unit here, do whatever. Not me. I was all in. I taught Advanced Algebra 2, and I taught geometry at the college prep geometry. So those are the two things that I taught. I went in every morning before school, about 6 o'clock every morning. Thankfully, I have such a lovely husband, and so he was willing to get my son up for school and all that. But I would go in and I would make my videos at school. So my flip is predominantly video based. That is not necessarily how a lot of people hear flip, they hear video, and that's not necessarily the case. My husband, and I'll talk about his flip here at the end, or once we get to the questions, is that he has the students read. He's also math, but he teaches statistics, and he loves his statistics book. And so he does it through reading. He does it, well, at his one course, his Calc 3 course that he teaches, which is also flipped, that is video, okay? And again, so he does both there. But what my students do is generally they have a video to watch of content. And that video most of them are probably 7 or 8 minutes. They're not very long. But binomial theorem expansion, that's about 20 minutes long. So there are some videos that are a little longer, but majority of them, well, I would probably say 90% of them are less than 15 minutes. So one of the things that the students like about the flip class is that they know how long their homework is going to take. Like a lot of my advanced kids, as yours probably are involved in absolutely everything. And so they know they have to give me 15 minutes every other day. Because now we do a block, and it's 90 minutes, 4 blocks a day. And so I see my Advanced Algebra 2 kids, I see every other day. So on A days, or my kids are B days. And then my Algebra 1, which is the course I also flip now, and I've only been flipping that for about 4 years, I see them every day because of the model that State College did with our the Algebra 1 that I teach is the lower Algebra 1 that have very low projected PVAS. I do see them every day, and they flip too, okay? So they watch a video. The video's an Edpuzzle. Have you guys heard of Edpuzzle? It's awesome. It allows me to embed questions. I embed the WISC. What is a WISC? All of this we're going to talk about here in a little bit, okay? The WISC is watch, summarize, question. So it's a Google form that I actually stole from, well, she gave me permission to use it, Kristen Kirsch, which is a big flipping person, and she's written the Flipping Math Classroom booklet, the books. And so then at the start of each of my classes, we start together as a class, and I go over those WISCs. Maybe somebody had a question, maybe somebody was confused, and again, I'm going to show you what those look like here shortly. And I talk about the learning target and the agenda, and then answer any questions. They also sometimes will have your turns within the Edpuzzle that they have to try themselves, and then I'll look at the results of that, and either if I feel that a lot of kids are missing that, we might go over that. I also do true false after every session, because I do true false in math, it's pretty powerful, and we'll go over the true false with that for each section, okay? So, continuing, so I start with, let me go back, okay, so here's the WISC. This is what the WISC looks like. And I took a lot of stuff out of this, so for privacy reasons, but the 4 main things, there's other things like their name, their email, what block they have me, that kind of stuff, but those are hidden or just chopped off. But Scott, when he gave me the permission to go ahead and proceed with doing the flip, he said, I want to know, how are they watching it? Are they watching it via computer, via smartphone, via tablet, whatever? So that's what this is. This is what this column is. It tells me how they watched it. Then the summarizing, they want them to summarize what exactly they watched in their own words. And this one was on solving rational expressions, or solving rational equations, solving equations with rational expressions. And then they had to say whether they were confused, discussion, or example. So discussion, oftentimes they just say, I got it, we're good, I understand, okay? But sometimes that's actually where the powerful part comes from, because sometimes a kid will ask a question, and I'll be like, wow, and then we'll have a discussion on that question, or on that whatever concept that they put there. Some people will put confusion. As you notice, there's a bunch of confusions on this one, which is expected with rational equations. But, you know, why do extraneous roots come up? So it's a good conversation that we can have with the students as a discussion with that, okay? So that's with the WISC. Now, what I also do with the WISC, whether you care or not, to keep track of who did it, before I went to Edpuzzle, because I've only done Edpuzzle probably, maybe this is my 4th year doing Edpuzzle. So for 4 years, I didn't use Edpuzzle, and I strictly just did the WISC. Well, so I had to find a way to figure out who did it without driving myself crazy with just with it. So I wrote a script. Well, actually, I wrote it, and then I went out to YouTube and found a very similar script where it connects an email and a student number and puts a green or a red, and then it all goes into one spreadsheet, and I could just look at that spreadsheet and see, and I didn't make copies of that, but I could look at the spreadsheet and see who did which WISCs for which sections. So that's what this, so that's how I kept track of that. But now with Edpuzzle does it for me, because I embed this. This is the very last question in Edpuzzle, so that's how I'm going to know if they did it or not. Okay, I actually did the rational equation one as well, because after we go over the WISC, and after I go over the any your turns, any confusions, the class is pretty much asynchronous from there on out. They have to work through an agenda, and the agenda is it's always written on the whiteboard, it's also in their Canvas, where they can pull it up. It's a Google spreadsheet. So I start with I always have my learning targets on as to what we're doing that day, or the video coming in, video coming out, or whatever. And then we do, and I put attendance up there just for mine, so I don't forget it. And then, so I go over the agenda, their homework, any announcements that might be happening, and then I always have a quote on the whiteboard for my students, and I always give them a joke. But so this is usually done at the bell. When the bell rings, attendance is done, I talk about the agenda. And then we go into, the first part is usually where it says go, this one was a worksheet night. They had a worksheet for homework. So I didn't put the video coming off of the 6-6 video, but I would then address summarize. I have the students re-summarize for me every day, and then talk about that WISC, those confusions, those your turns, or any other things that came up. But this one was a worksheet day, so we actually just went right into going over a worksheet. If you look, and this is one of the reasons why it's asynchronous, is that at some point, usually, during that next class, they have to watch a video. This one was a 14.5-minute video, and that was the word problems that go with rational equations for you math teachers. And at some point, they have to do that. That's why it's asynchronous, because I can't wait till everybody's done with this. And this FA is a go formative. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of go formative, but it's a go formative where it grades it itself. And then, so I can't wait till everybody be done with this to get everybody in the video. So the class is at its own pace at this point. I never have all students at the same time in the video. So I'm always talking to somebody at some point throughout the block, okay? And that conversation, so this is a pretty boring day, and that was to get, this was just Friday, actually, lesson, because I was trying to get things in because I knew I was going to be here for the next 3 days, and so I was trying to get things in. But this is really, usually the agenda is 9, 10 steps, and they have to finish it. It's not an option, and so they have to manage their own work here. Like they can't on the board, and so they don't have time to be distracted and go off on. And so this is an advanced algebra 2 lesson here. There's usually a lot of other activities, other things that we're exploring, or other, when I get into conics, we do stuff with Play-Doh, with conics, and that'll be built into the agenda as well. So that's once they get to asynchronous. This is what I love about the course, is the asynchronous part of it. And that's because I have now the ability to conference with every single kid every single time I see them. Because I will check in with every kid, and it's not just a check-in with math, but it's a check-in with how's the day going? Is there something you need to tell me? Is there, that kind of thing. I have that ability because I don't have to stand in front of a room and preach to them. They are working at their own pace for that.
Students who just are struggling behind that they can't get it all done in a period, does it then become extra homework for them, or what do you do with it?
Good question. Okay, and that was a struggle with me at first, as to what I'd be like, well, you got to do it at home. Well, that's not going to solve anything. So if I have students that I can see might be struggling with the FA, because they always have an FA, they always have a Go formative. If I see that they're struggling with that, then I may come down and say, you know what, instead of doing all of this, just do these 2 problems or these 3 problems, or keep checking in with them. I don't want to put it, I tell the students it's the only thing that they have to do. If it's on the agenda and it's not finished, they have to do outside of classes the Go formatives. Because that's how you're going to know if you know what you're doing. That's the check-in of the material. So one question I didn't hear somebody ask me is, what if you have a kid that doesn't have internet access at home or a device at home? We are one-to-one. We're one-to-one Chromebooks. And this year and this was Advanced Algebra 2 that I just presented to you. Algebra 1's a little bit different, and I'll talk about that here shortly as well. But I do have 6 students that don't have internet at home. And all 6 of those students are, they're all from like Guatemala or Honduras. And so they don't have. And so what I just did was I asked the district to buy me some thumb drives, and I just put their videos on a thumb drive. By the way, every video has a matching note sheet that they don't have to record everything. And I actually don't care if they record anything. That's their prerogative. But the thumb drive, and I might give them 2, 3, 4 at a time. The only bad thing that doesn't allow me to do is they can't participate with the ed puzzle. And that's the only thing. But they're still watching. They're still able to watch. Now, I do have a student that has lost his privilege of taking a Chromebook home with him. And so we have arranged with him that he actually comes and he ends up having a study hall learning support time at before class. It's an Algebra 1 student. He then does a video, and like I said, the videos are 7, 8, usually minutes, and so he usually does that work then before class. So I mean, it's not ideal, but it works for those students. We also have students that, in my Algebra 1 class, I have 27 students and I have 25 IEPs. And So we have 3 students in that class that have an auditory processing, and so we provide them field notes. They still have to watch it. It still has to record them on Edpuzzle watching it, but they don't have to take notes while they watch. And so that helps with that attention, that auditory processing, disability or whatever. Or if we have a kid that has a concussion, we'll do that same thing. Any other questions? Yeah?
How have you found the responses from parents?
I've not had one negative response from a parent. In fact, I would say they go the other way, and that, well, that's not true, that's a lie. There was one parent. But the parents actually appreciate it because they don't have to worry about helping their kid at home. You know, I mean, in most, like, especially for advanced algebra 2, is before I flipped, their homework was a worksheet. And so how many times have you given a kid a worksheet to do, they go home, they come back, it's not done because they don't know how to do it, then you end up having to reteach that anyway, right? So I always tell the parents that I'm removing the hard stuff from the home and putting it in the classroom with me. That's where they practice and do, and the easy stuff is just watching the video. But the parents do, for the most part, like I said, I had one parent that didn't like the flip, and that, and it was kind of a funny story, and it was primarily came down to he couldn't do his son's homework for him, is what it really came down to. It was a college professor. Up at that point, he was always working with his son at night, and at the time, the other advanced algebra 2 teacher did not flip, and so we agreed to allow that child to be removed from my class and put in that other advanced algebra 2 class, and then 3 years later, he ends up in my husband's flipped math class, and so it worked out. And my husband's the only one that teaches Calc 3, so he had to defend it. Maybe it's not for everybody, you know. But now, how many of you have PLCs now, and where you have to do everybody has to do everything the same? So pretty much now all of the advanced algebra 2 classes are, and all the low-level algebra ones are all flipped. So they don't have a choice there's no reason to teacher shop at that point. So, okay? Any other questions before? Okay, so some of the technology, I just have this slide up here to show you the things that I'm using. So, because it is very technology based. My kids have to have their Chromebooks, they have to be on the computer. And so, just to go through some of these, I've talked about a couple of them. Smart Notebook is where I make my lesson. Okay, that's how I put everything together in a Smart Notebook. And then I use QuickTime to record it. I have a Promethean board at home, and the school, I have like the podiums. The school district went to 4s when we built our new high school, so they just told me to take my smart board home and keep it at home. And so, but before that, I'd go into school at 6 o'clock in the morning and make my videos. And then I used Camtasia. I was lucky enough to go to, at the time, when I first started flipping, there was something called Con. So kind of like a PEC, but for flipping, okay? And the one that I went to that was in Mars, Pennsylvania, all the attendees got a free Camtasia account. Camtasia is not cheap. And so that's what I have used, and my district just continued to buy it for me as the upgrades came. And that's what I use to edit my videos. So I do edit. You don't have to. They don't have to be perfect. But what's up? No? Okay. And then the Google Forms with the WISC. The Edpuzzle was how we watch videos, and the Go Formative. Again, every class is not a test, not an assessment, a summative assessment. We use Go Formative. Okay? So, yeah.
Is there a free video editor or no?
There is.
Okay.
Sorry, am I not in the? Okay. There are several free video editing. Screencastify, I think, is one of them. Does anybody else know of any I didn't have to have that, so that's why I don't know that much about the free ones. Anybody else have any ideas of the